came dressed for the occasion.
I did. I did. It's a party today.
Sounds good. Well, I apologize. We'll wait just like maybe one more minute as we wait for different people to come in. Our session with Dr. Jack Stamp went right to the hour, and it was completely amazing. 2 straight hours with no break. So there we go. So if I start to stutter, it's I might need your help here. So my mind is a little bit blown from the session that we just experienced there.
He's awesome. He's awesome. He came. He visited our institution this last school year, or
Oh,
was it 2 years ago? And it was great. It was great. It was wonderful having him here.
there you go. Well, he was wearing Campbell University shirt, so he's ours. He's ours.
I've got the color. I've got my, my bright orange.
Oh, thank you.
Today.
Thank you. We had to teach Josh Gall last night to make sure he had the right orange, not Texas orange, Campbell orange. So. All right, so we are at 4 o'clock. This is the end of 3 days of virtual workshops from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It has been completely amazing. At the same time, we have another session with Kayla doing effective practices of social media on the other end. So please feel free to jump back and forth. But again, Freddie Green and I are going to talk about strategies for an effective sectional prep. And, we're going to really talk about this in 2 different ways. We're going to talk this in the way of a norm when we're together, as well as mention throughout as a thread the unfortunate point that we are in with COVID. Mm-hmm. And we hope that many of the strategies that we talk about and discuss, and I mean discuss by please feel free to open your mic, and we would love to see the faces amongst us. It kind of brings everything to a much more personal end here for the week. But if you have a question, turn your mic on, please put it in the chat. And tell us about your experiences, or ask, how can I do this under my particular circumstance? Because for teachers that are here, it might be different for you based on how you are going to handle your students. But I think the best thing that we need to be able to do is to be organized in our approach. So I'm going to share my Google slide here. And Freddie, can you confirm that you can see the Google slide?
I can see the slide.
Excellent. So first of all, I am who I am. I think I've said enough who I am throughout the 3 days. And again, this is Freddie Green, assistant professor of music at Missouri Southern State University, trumpet professor, jazz professor, all around incredible guy. Okay, we're going to keep it at that because we're going to push it to questions at the end. So when I think of a sectional, usually that means that I'm handing the reins over to my students, or I have a much smaller group. And the other thing that we always, a sectional means is there is a specific amount of time. And I think we need to think, is it too much time and we get scared what's going to happen and whether we're going to have the same amount of people coming out of that section? Or is it not enough time to cover the things that we want to cover and feel accomplished? So in this first slide, I put, we need to have a goal when we go into a sectional. And let me just iterate too, when we're talking sectionals, I made this very general because this could be a jazz band. This could be a wind band. This could be a marching band. This could be the color guard. This could be a vocal ensemble. So
brass quintet preparing for solo and ensemble by themselves and
absolutely
helping them. Yeah.
So when we go in, make sure you have a goal. Please don't send your students away and say, go sectional. That's probably one of the worst things that you can do in that. The next thing is plan a process. And that's something that we're going to talk about as we go through. Uh, uh, Many of our students are not music educators. They're looking for you for the experience of what to do in a rehearsal, and and even maybe write it down on a piece of paper. We're going to start, make sure we tune, make sure you do something slow that you can kind of tone together. And then again, we'll touch on some things to kind of get to the meat of the situation. Have intent. What does that mean? Have a reason why you're having the sectional. Try not to use a sectional just to fill in time or to do paperwork. Have intent is creating value to the situation. And then furthermore, and again, we're going to be going back through this process here, have a way to assess. And if you have a way to assess, you also have a legitimate way to tell your student, great job, you accomplished it. And let's also agree to maybe disagree that sometimes in a sectional, even in a rehearsal, we don't always accomplish what we go in to do. Mm-hmm. So, okay, so going back in a goal, and Fred, maybe you can help me with this. A typical goal, I would have, make sure you have an end in mind.
Yes.
So what are some of the ends that we can think about in a quick sectional situation?
Some of the ones for me, you have some of the things like matching articulation. So if we're working on our concert piece, we have a march, we'll have a ballad of some sort, and then we have something else which we just have most likely just wanted to play or love, which could be variants in style. So working on march articulation could be one thing as far as a goal, depending on what you're going for. Getting the articulation in this style, in this specific piece, in this designated from A to B.
Exactly. So again, set that goal and have an end in mind. What do you want them to end with? Articulation, sound.
Yeah.
It might be as simple as being able to read through the music, okay? Because we can be in different parts of learning the music as we go through, which leads us to plan a process. And these are things like Freddie was saying, establish a good sound first when you get that going. I'll be honest, Freddie was the lead trumpet player at the UF Jazz Band when I was doing my doctorate. I was just a minion in that section. And that was the very first thing that Freddie would do with us as a trumpet section in jazz trumpet sectionals, is making sure that we were sounding like we wanted to sound, and we were playing together, and we had the same articulation. We were all on that same page. So established a sound. Another thing in the process is, especially in a sectional, rarely go over 3 touch points. Three goals or 3 musical areas is more than enough, especially when you're handing it off to a student. Yes. If you just go in there and say, okay, we're doing the whole suite, cover the whole first movement, that's a lot of information. Or, we're doing Air Link by Jack Stamp, cover that whole piece during your sectional. I think, and I'm saying this looking at some good faces that were in that last session, all of a sudden I'd be like, mind blown, it's not going to happen. Okay. And so, we're talking about working with students and putting some leadership qualities in them, is give them 3 touch points. It could be establish the rhythms at a certain area of the music. Freddie mentioned define the particular articulations, and you might have to show them so they can kind of pass it along. Can you think of other touch points that you would normally do, Freddie?
Oh, of course we mentioned sound. In sound, and this is personal, so please, take it with a grain of salt. Throw it away afterwards. Keep it. I'm really big in really being fluid in the idea of sound. I do believe it's somewhat appropriate to allow tonal colors to change and defining tonal colors or impression um, when talking about sound. If I were playing Rolling Thunder, I'm going to approach my horn with a different color in my head of some sense than if I'm playing the hymn song of Philip Bliss. There's going to be there's going to be a difference within it, which will affect not just tone color, but it'll affect some other areas of my playing as well. So defining that color or what it is that you are trying to accomplish from your ensemble, having that in mind, with the touch point as far as defining tone, the articulation, and then even something as simple as attacks and releases, making them becoming just aware of what's around them within their section before trying to include the whole band. But what is the section doing?
Mm-hmm. And the next thing I want to bring in concepts of like color guard. Being the director of athletic bands, I never, want to forget that particular area. But when I think of them, I also think technique with the application. Again, it rolls with the instrumentation as well. But if part of the problem of a touch point deals with technique, maybe a little bit of time needs to be on staccato, or the difference between staccato and marcato, or even playing soft and loud. If I'm talking color guard, hand positions are very important. The element of a particular angle or release when I'm talking about rifle and things like that. So a touch point can even be refining a technique, but what's most important is taking that technique and applying it into practice. And many times we make this mistake when we do warm-ups in band or warm-ups in anything. If we do a warm-up that means nothing to what we're doing, it's going to be lost. So again, I'm a big advocate of making sure when we're warming up, it has a direct transition to what we're doing and how can we apply it. And it's much easier than we think.
That's beautiful. That reminds me of the trumpet clinic I did, where it was talking about working up a piece and making sure that our fundamentals are involved in that piece. What is it that I have to be able to do? What am I doing to prepare myself outside of that piece to be able to do that task? Yeah, that's beautiful.
Absolutely. So the next moment, again, rehashing is intent. Do what you say and say what you mean. So the person who's leading that sectional, make sure that, again, they need to be the most informed person, especially from the director. But they also need to be confident in what they're trying to interpret. They need to be confident about what kind of staccato you want, what kind of dynamics they're trying to accomplish. And that leads right into students, whether they'll say it or not, value the time. You need to fill the time that you have with a lot of valuable information. And when you don't, they'll get distracted. That's when they start seeing, the mouse running in the corner. That's when they start seeing it's not daytime outside anymore, it's now nighttime. That's when they start seeing it's really cold in this room and I need to, put on a sweater. When you fill your time with valuable information, you'll forget about those things.
Yes.
And I think we all experience a clinic or an opportunity when you say, where did the time go? And that's because you filled the time with valuable information, whether it be entertaining or applicable information.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And go ahead.
The more meaningful any content can be, the more they'll value, the more they'll be hungry for it, and they'll be hungry for that development. It's also a great opportunity in valuing that time and doing what you say and building consistency. For some of the things we do with our educational philosophy, we're also taking this opportunity in sectionals to train the whole person within our ensembles, whether through color guard and through the instrumental section. So please just be aware as we're talking about sectionals, we're training people in smaller groups to now take ownership in how to run those organizations, how to deal with interpersonal skills, how to communicate effectively. And it all starts with us up on the podium and being able to communicate with our constituents or our students, and then helping them develop those same skills which they carry through life, and make tons of change and tons of impression. We get to touch not just them, but everyone that they get to touch here on forward.
And let's remember, many times when we're going in the sectionals, we're working on weaknesses.
Yeah.
And in any of our groups, whether it's a collegiate group, high school group, professional group, community group, middle school group, or a beginning band group, you're going to have a diversity of abilities. You know, in so many situations, I'll go in where a student literally doesn't know how to tongue, and we're going in and working on articulation. Okay, not only is that kind of a frustrating factor already for an instructor, but think about how a student is going to kind of contend with that. So when you're working with your sectionals and you're working with your section leaders who are leading these sectionals, make sure that, you know, they're graceful and grateful with the people they're working with. Make them understand that, you know, if that person can't tongue or can't do the technique, this sectional might be a step in the direction of having that ability, and accept those small steps where some people might make large leaps in the accomplishment of that sectional. Again, going back to color guard, you know, not everybody's going to be able to do a triple and a quadruple flip of that flag. Not everybody has, you know, theoretically the strength or the handwork. But that's where you can spend that 5 minutes for people to turn around and the strongest people working with the weakest people. Because we talk about not only valuing time, we have to value people. And when the weak people know that you care and that you care about them getting better, they'll put the time in. Because when I think the adage goes, when people know you care, they'll care back. And then we get to assessing or assessment. At the very end, it's important that the person who is leading the sectional ask themselves, did what I did it improve? And why not? This is a great opportunity for your section leaders to grow. I think many of us, and I'm talking, and maybe I'll say I've had more than the norm. I've left rehearsals not feeling like I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And in 3 decades of being on the podium, maybe I feel personally that that's happened more than I wanted. But it's a great feeling when it does happen. And sometimes your failure isn't felt through the ensemble. You know, that the group might say, oh yeah, you know, we felt great, which is always one of my things at the end is, do you feel we got better? And I hope and I pray in my head saying, I hope they say yes. I hope they say yes. So, and 90% of the times they do, but it's that 10% I'm like, okay, I agree with you, but what are we going to do different the next time? And I say different because if this is where a section leader and even as a conductor or a director, you learn, if you're going to go back and do a sectional the exact same way and you're not accomplishing or improving, you need to change something. Mm-hmm. So, and then are you a step further than you were? That's a really important question to ask. Maybe you didn't, start AirLink from sight reading and now you can play it perfectly, but are you a step further than when you started that sectional? That is such an important realization to take on.
Yes. Always being in a learning and growth mindset. never being afraid. Any stumbles that we have, some, if looking back in my life or in anyone's life or any stories, some of those moments are the best growth moments that we've had when we've fallen on our face and we've had to reassess and we've had to relook, and always being open to that. Another thing is you're looking at sectionals. One thing that has greatly benefited me are reaching out to my colleagues, and talking about the sectional experience or things that went well and didn't go well, kind of formulating new ideas. And through the combination of ideas, we can kind of create something new and possibly help each other out and figuring out what may be best, what may not be best, and what may work in our own specific and unique situations, is something that's always there. And just always being able to grow and us being able to share as we're asking our students to share. Because we're asking our students to be in a very vulnerable situation. Being a section leader or being even in the section, we're going to do a sectional. And now the first thing, if I'm a kid, oh my goodness, now they're going to hear me. Everyone can hear me play. Everyone knows it's me. You can no longer hide. So setting that environment within your organization, your school, and in your band, or whatever it is you're doing, color guard, of comfort and knowing that we're all here to learn. Me as a director, I'm learning, and I'm loving every moment of it. I don't teach the same way I did when I first started teaching. And I'm glad for all the stumbles I've had along the way, but also making sure my students know I'm still learning, I'm still searching, and really keeping all of those things very fluid and in the forefront. We're all learning. The section leader who's, there learning, the person who's at the, at weaker in a specific area of performance is still learning. And if we have that acknowledgement and respect towards one another, it really helps with that.
Absolutely. So another couple things on this slide that I think many a times fill my sectionals. And I think sectionals shouldn't be a point of learning the music at a very holistic point. When we go into sectionals, we should be looking at small elements. And again, as I mentioned, rarely should you ever go into a sectional with more than touching on 3 elements, because that's a lot to accomplish. And we'll talk about time in a second. But a lot of times I'll look at tone, tuning, and technique. Catherine LeGrand today in our flute master class started her session with, again, what she called the most important thing about an instrument is establishing a good tone. Because if you don't have a good tone, you're not going to be able to play in tune. And if you can't play in tune, you're going to start, that's going to be the origination of why a lot of things aren't sounding so well. So if you're having a flute sectional, the first thing we should be doing is taking the best, establishing who has the best flute sound and trying to get the rest of the section to sound like that. And having your section leader, and again, this is a great leadership point, to start looking at embouchures, looking at posture, looking at all these simple things to lead them in the path to a good tone. And we want to make sure that the section leader knows that the difference between a thin sound, an airy sound, and try to get through that. And you as a director have to be able to realize what those are as well. And that's where in our college tech classes, when we're taking flute tech, clarinet tech, and all the way through, are so important. And they're not as important as you think until you're in the trenches, experiencing that in the beginning and middle school band. Tuning. There are many different approaches to tuning. I love using the circle of force in the Edless creative director approach. That's a personal thing for me. Some people like to use a strobe tuner where they actually match pitches. Some people like to have a tuner on every single stand where the student plays into it. Some people, another thing that I'm a big fan of is establishing a pitch, singing the pitch, playing the pitch, singing the pitch, playing the pitch. And I think that has been a wonderful thing. And students don't like to sing. I'm sure if I asked everybody to sing right now, it would be a challenge, let alone seeing people's faces is a challenge. But let me tell you really quick, singing is invaluable. As a teacher, you're comfortable because you've realized the great tool that it is. I remember in high school, I had a free period. And when my band director found out that I had the free period, I ended up in choir the next day. Not because I wanted to, it's because he knew where my future was more than I did at the time. So Fred, anything about tuning that you can add?
I think they're all great. They're all great. With where I work, we do a lot of drone work with singing. We do a lot of pitch bending and really working on relationships. But I'm also I work at a university now. When I was doing a lot of stuff when I taught K through 12, we did a lot of course we did the visual, but then we did a lot of stuff with hearing and listening. So putting on drones and singing scales and hearing the relationship between our tonic and hearing the relationship between some of those notes, and then also being able to add some of those in. So through like tonal energy, you can play 2, 3, 4, I think up to 5 notes at a time in the drone setting. So having them do the scale and then putting on that drone setting for what the third may be to see if we're hearing the third well. Do we actually know where that pitch is? And just starting to develop those aural skills a bit further.
And I think also what's important to tuning is understanding the tendencies
Yes.
of instruments. Being a trumpet player, I know that, that low D and C sharp is going to be ugly. And, when I'm dealing with middle school and a beginner group, we're not teaching about throwing that valve out there. But what you can teach is for them to hear the pitch and match the pitch. And even though you're not telling them to, when you're matching the pitch and just adjusting the jaw a little bit, you're teaching them how to bend that note a little bit. Same thing, you can do the same concept with clarinet and saxophone and many of the brass instruments. But usually, like I said, the younger they are, allowing them to hear the pitch, match the pitch, take that other pitch away, and have that group sustain that pitch going through, and then bring that pitch in to see if they sustained it is a great technique. And that is a touch point that you can spend a couple minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes on, and if you're crazy like me and Fred, you probably might even have a sectional on just matching pitch. Again, going back to our UF days, I remember many a time in a jazz band, he would make us do these lines and end on a particular pitch that was really bad for trumpet. And I remember spending an hour making sure that it was going to work. I don't think that's going to work for a 6th grader, but it was still grueling for a doctoral student. I'll put that. And then let's go on to technique. Let's not forget tone, tuning, and technique is going to hold back a lot of students on playing a right rhythm. Range is a big thing. Clarinet, going over the break, that's a technique that they have to work on. If we are not working and spotlighting these techniques that need to be accomplished, we're not going to be able to apply them where we wanted to hear them effectively in the music. So tone, tuning, and technique are 3 touch points that you can put in a sectional and it will be worthwhile. Next one, simple, but a lot of people don't focus on this because they send students into a sectional and say, just go learn this phrase or learn A to B. But folks, if they can't start together, if they can't play together, and they can't end together, I don't know why we're together. And the same thing happens in color guard. We talk about timing. When when they look at things musically and they have to do a particular movement or a spin they need to start together, they need to play, they need to spin together so it's in unity, and they need to end together. We all know, you know, and again, just being a little geeky on the marching band side, when that color guard goes and, you know, they're doing quads and they all end together, that's a moment. That's an amazing moment. But the same thing when we're talking about our ensembles, simply to take phrases and learning how to breathe together, to start together, making sure people aren't taking it at different tempos, making sure rhythms are together, and then that phrase ends together, creating a complete thought, is a huge concept and can take quite a bit of time. Fred?
That's you said it all.
Okay. That bright orange tie was speaking to me, so I thought it was the flag. And then, you know, when they start getting into the music, a lot of times we find it's not that they don't know the music, but it's the point that bad habits are being formed, or we learn it the wrong way. So there are many times where I'll think about a sectional about refine and define. And a lot of times, and I know Fred is really big with articulation, how can we refine or how can we define good articulation? When we're talking about color guard, technique is a big way how we need to define how we do, and counting, and a lot of times counting out loud is another way how we are going to refine what we're performing.
Yeah, yeah. When I'm talking about articulation a lot, and I work in jazz and classical. I enjoy syllables for specific things, and really talking about do, to, and all of those different things. At times, it's hard to cross over between some of the woodwinds and brass, especially the reeded ones. Flute and all the brass instruments articulate just about the same way, and those they don't translate poorly. They translate relatively well. But really thinking about what are those syllables we want to use, and what are those individuals doing in their oral cavities to produce those things. And that's kind of thinking back to those technique classes on how you learned to produce not just sound, but to articulate, and what goes into a clean articulation, and so on and so forth. And really making sure we're defining how the starting of the note, and then if we have a specific rhythm, how are we thinking about formulating that rhythm through those syllable sounds that we're doing. Are we going ta 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 ta? Are we going to? Are we going to? What are the things that we're trying to do, and what are the sounds that we're trying to have come across, or what do we want coming across? As you're thinking of defining and redefining, and we're getting into rhythm and all, how are they going to articulate the dotted quarter 16th note rhythm for the right clarity on that 16th note, and really thinking in that type of thing so that it's very definitive for the student in knowing what is expected or what they want to do and practice and going forward in those things.
Yep, and there's many things that I think about, and it varies per the instrument as well. And again, going back to technique, I think about percussion. Making sure everybody's either leading with the left or leading with the right. I think about percussion when I see a rhythm. I think rudiments. Are we doing a paradiddle? Are we doing a flam? Are we doing a ratamacue? And that's where understanding a lot of those rudiments can be a practice that we can apply into the music. And too many times as a percussionist, our students don't understand what and why we learn all these rudiments. And it's because all these rudiments are building blocks to what we're going to find in music. And again, it's spread in concert music, and it's all over drumline aspects of performance. And then the last thing is memorization. Oh, go ahead.
I apologize. Can I add in with percussionists remembering breathing when we're phrasing? So even in beginning band and even in all the other ensembles, as the ensemble is breathing to start a note and then producing that note, really encouraging your percussionist to follow along the same realm. because it helps out with timing. If you really you go into the orchestral world, all the string players breathe with the orchestra.
Mhm.
All of the percussionists are breathing with the orchestra. And it provides it's a different experience amongst the group and helps as far as timing and phrasing when you understand the breath that goes into it. So I just wanted to add that, and that's it.
Absolutely. And like I said, usually the people leading your sectionals are also usually your section leaders. And we have to remember a section leader is a model, not only a model in leadership, but a model in how you want the rest of your group to play. If you have a weaker section or smaller section, you have to create those models. Maybe it's a guest, maybe it's you, or maybe you're providing videos as well. And I say that because back in my day, there weren't a whole lot of videos that were accessible. But if you're as young as Freddie is, growing up in the age of the internet and YouTube, there are a lot of great models out
Yeah,
there as well.
there are. YouTube wasn't around when I was in school. I wish it was, but it wasn't there.
Okay. The last one is sometimes debatable, but I put it there and I'll explain. Memorization. And being able to play by memory isn't necessarily maybe the best term. What I probably should have put there is internalizing, and taking the music and being able to go beyond what is written. That's when they're gonna start making music, and that's where I have and people have the hiccup of memorization. A lot of time when we start to memorize, especially in the marching band area, that's when we start learning things wrong, and we start learning bad habits. Um, but when we internalize, we get beyond playing quarter notes and playing loud and soft, and we start playing these beautiful ideas and concepts and not reading them again. I love it when I'm in a sectional and I get to the point where we're playing this and I say, okay, turn the stand around, and the students look at me like, we don't have it memorized. And I'm like, oh, well, prove it. So I say, what's the first note? And here we go. Let's sing what you're supposed to play. And they sing it, and we start playing it. And all of a sudden, they know more than they think they know, because they have internalized a lot of the music, but they have their eyes glued onto that music so much. Once they start internalizing the music, they can start creating more music, and louds and softs become a crescendo, become a development of real music. I'm not saying, with your grade 6 A+ wind band to go out and memorize, the first suite or anything like that. But if we're working on a particular area, see if you can get them to internalize it, look away, and perform it, because that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to get to the point of reading something and to the end point of performing something. And that's where I have a problem. Even what I put there is for memorization. What do you think of that, Fred?
I love that term memorization. Like especially in marching bands, from my personal experience, um, we normally only learn to play it one way, and it's really hard for those people in the ensemble to change anything with it, which is what you mentioned. But you'll notice that if you're doing a sectional with if you're working with some marching bands, and it's not all, they'll play it, and then you'll say, "Oh, let's try this," and they're not capable at the time of even comprehending the change or the slight subtlety that they're asking to experience or to take part in. But if you have it internalized, you then can change what you're playing. And the same thing like with scales. You have some students, they learn the scale pattern for all state or all county, but then you ask them, okay, let's play it in this different rhythmic pattern or do something different. And now all of a sudden, they're unable to play the scale starting on the same note and ending on the same note that they were on before. So I love that difference between memorization, we've memorized a pattern or a thing, and internalization of actually knowing or experiencing almost whatever it is that we're taking part in. And I think I love that because I think it's a great difference between, are we, and that's a question we can have in marching band. Are we memorizing, or in band, are we memorizing what we're doing, or are we actually internalizing and experiencing what it is we're going through? Because it's an experience that we get to have within music and in life. So I love that.
So let's look again, when we're thinking about putting a sectional together, number one, let's have a goal in mind. Just don't say, go in the other room and have a sectional. Number two, plan a process. And many a times, don't give them over 3 touch points, and make them very attainable. And it could be as simple as start together, play together, end together, or work on this particular rhythm. But a lot of times, if you do more than 3 things, they're going to forget about it. And even if your section leader can remember 5, let's think about some of our weaker players too. Okay, so 3 touch points. Have an intent. Don't just throw them into a sectional, and have a reason. And that will be defined. You're valuing their time. Many times 3 touch points will fill the amount of time, which we're going to get into. But don't send them in there to do one real vague thing, because you'll find out that vague thing will be taking the blinds down and making paper cranes or something like that. And then have a way to assess. Have a way to see, did they learn anything as they came back? Have them be able to be ready to perform something for you. Have the section leader be honest. Do you feel it's a step further? Okay. So moving on. Next one. Let's see. Yep. We talked a little bit about this before. And again, these are all going to intermingle. When we talk about tone, tuning, and technique, things that we're thinking about is embouchure. Stamina is a big thing. Having just getting them to continuously play, stamina is a concept we got to think about. Ability, we talked about the variances of weaker players and stronger players. And obviously, the goal is we want them to develop. A sectional toward a concert performance is going to be different than in the very beginning of that musical season. Okay, we're going to have different goals. Hopefully, we're not sight reading before we go into our performance. Let's not forget about listening. This could be listening to a recording. This could be listening to a model player. This could be listening to each other sing. And that is going to help with, especially if we're in block scheduling in a school, or if we have a 3-hour rehearsal. Don't think that any player, not me, a college player, anybody, can't play for a solid 3 hours. Okay? It's all about balance. It's all about, again, adding some listening in there and talking about these concepts are going to help with the stamina and the endurance. There's a difference between listening and hearing. Make sure they are hearing what you're saying as well as listening. They're internalizing and they're taking what you're saying and doing something with it. And you got to remember, we're all different types of learners. Some people they need to do it. Some people need to hear it. Some people need to see it. Some people need to talk it through. Some people need to do it and not be able to do it and learn how to get closer to it. Oral visual decision making is a really big thing that can bring some success to your situation. Again, model, demonstrate, and unite with the same technique. I'm just using it because I'm thinking of Freddie and some of our background. When we were in those jazz rehearsals, there are 5 mature professional players all coming from different parts with different techniques because we all had different people. And Freddie, as the section leader, had to kind of unite us to get us thinking on the same page. I think about it when we bring our marching band together, when we bring freshmen in, especially at the college level. They're all coming from great high school groups with different techniques and different marching styles, none of which are wrong. We just have to agree to unite to use the same technique going forward as a group. So anything extra you want to add for tone, tuning, and technique?
Always approach it with love and patience. Don't ever be frustrated as challenges arise, and as frustration is going to be on your part and on their part. Always remember we're all people.
Yep. Start together, play together, end together. It's my SPE approach, SPE, sync with time and uniformity. Refine and define. Vocalization is a big thing. Freddie talks about the to, the do, the food, If you can sing it together, I'm not saying it has to sound pretty, but if you can phonetically say it together, believe me, that'll speak through the horn. With guard, a lot of that is counting, singing the music when you're doing the work. It will help with refine and define. Builds big ideas. Start with a small idea and let it grow. A lot of times us musicians see these string of black notes and all of a sudden we see defeat. But if we take that big idea and we break it down and say, oh, wait a minute, that's just a scale, or that's just a chromatic scale. All of a sudden we're taking our warm-up routine and we're applying it, and that difficult long black note passage becomes, it's just a fast octave and a half chromatic scale, over and done. And as I think Freddie was also talking about, encourage each other. Okay, there is nobody that can't. There's just the people that don't try. Everybody will develop in their own time. But it's also important that if things aren't challenging, they'll think it's a waste of time too. Why am I doing this? I could do this already. And remember, it's always the we over the me. We're in this together. We're going to be performing together. Ensembles aren't about solos, unless there is a solo, but then you wouldn't be doing that in the sectional. And then again, on memorization, more internalization, it's about repetition, understanding, internalizing, and making connections. Yes. I can't emphasize enough, if you're not making connections, you're going to lose them. Yes. Why am I doing this? Why is it important? Why do I have to be soft when the flutes are playing at this section? As a trumpet player, of course. As a drummer, why do I have to do a crescendo when just the woodwinds are playing? And notice why I'm giving you the example. Why am I playing soft? Because of what's happening in another area of the ensemble. Yeah. And that's important to mention in a sectional, is not just what you're doing, but why what you're doing is important relative to what else is going on. Yeah. Okay. So as we run out of time, I can't believe that we're hitting the last 10 minutes. Maybe I could just touch on this really quick. I believe this is my last slide, almost last slide, and that's just the value of time. Really quick, sectionals can vary in different amounts of time, 15, 30, 45 minutes or more. And this is just a way you could do maybe a screenshot. Maybe I can suggest that if you'd like, but different ways that you can break down your sectional so it's not so vague. Tune, demo, model, play, assess. 15 minutes on one particular topic. Or maybe I have an hour and I'm taking that 15-minute concept, and after I tune, I'm doing that with 3 different areas in the music. And again, isolate issues, ask questions, always ask, does that make sense? That's such a small question to ask, but you're going to notice, I don't get it. Or I still can't play that fast. And then work with your strength and weaknesses together as one. Singing, listening, internalize. How does it fit within the score and other parts? Determine what you have to do and realize the divided time you have to do it. And real quick, work as a team. Motivation is a big part of being a section leader. Continue to raise the bar and don't raise the bar too fast, and that because you'll lose the majority of your players, especially your weak players who you want to make better. But raising the bar of the ensemble, achievement and success. Not all people are at the same level. Please remember that. We all have different passions. We all have different intensities. We all have different abilities, and that's okay. I always have to remind myself as a collegiate athletic band director that nobody, and I repeat, nobody majors in marching band. And I have to get that when I'm working with them and I start getting intense and I'm building the rehearsal. I have to remember, we got to remember to have fun. We have to remember to achieve. And we have to remember nobody's going to walk out of here with a diploma in marching band. Because I have my doctorate and I don't even have it in marching band, okay? It's an activity till the very end. So with that said, I know we're running out of time. If anybody has any questions, want to open your mic, Fred, I know I did a lot of the talking. Sorry if I stepped on toes.
Great.
But any last minute comments here? Fred, anything?
No, just, yeah, keep doing that. It's worth it. It's worth it. And what we do is just so much greater than band and more greater than, keep doing it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And it makes an impact for life.
Yeah. And, two things. Even if it's writing it on a piece of paper saying, 3 bullet points and giving it to your section leader before they go into that sectional. When I walk into a marching rehearsal for 3 hours, they know from the top of the hour to my end goal what I want to do, and I usually put how much time I'm going to spend on it. And if they achieve that goal, I don't make up more. When they work hard, they earn it. In a situation like that, we get to go home early, and that sometimes is the reward itself. And speaking of rewards, remember, music is a passion, it's a privilege, and it's an opportunity. We all are in music because we have a love for it, not a hate for it. And if we had a hate for it, we wouldn't be doing it. So remember to, push that love and push that passion with your students, and enable your students to encourage and passion one another. A lot of times that will encourage your students even more, and that builds unity, that builds family. And like I said, I was born, bred, and fed on a band family, and I'll never forget all the trophies, all the plaques. I have no idea where they are, but the memories will never be taken away. So I hope everybody had got something out of this session. I hope you enjoyed it. I have the other session over here on my left. It's still going on, so I don't feel so bad. So with that said, Freddie, thank you so much for joining me on this session.
Thank you.
And thank you for everybody being a part of this last session here. Dr. Beach is right here. He just walked in my office, so I'm going to thank him. Yep, I did. They're saying if you want to talk about social media, they're still on, so you can bounce over there. So on behalf of Campbell University, thank you so much for being a part of this incredible experience. Please join us again in the future. Please join us on campus. Make sure you look at your emails coming up. I'm going to be sending a lot of links that the presenters asked me to share with you, and I'm going to send them to all nearly 150 participants that enrolled in our Inspired to Inspire workshop series. So again, on behalf of myself, Dr. Wilson, and the whole gang of band folks here at Campbell University, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Have a fantastic weekend, and go band.
Yeah. I'll stick around for a couple of moments if people do have questions or casually want to chat or any of that stuff.
Excellent, and I will too. And the social media folks they're laughing. I don't have the volume up, but they're having fun, so they might be worth checking out. If you are a teacher and you're still on, make sure that you put your name, school district, and state in the chat. We will be submitting that, making sure you get your CEU credit. Again, we are still on if you have any questions. Thank you for all the thank yous. That's awesome. Very much appreciated. Freddie, thank you for sticking around and
thank you, man. How's
being guided through my Google slide.
You all having good weather? Is it burning up over there?
I don't know because I'm freezing. So actually, everybody is now off. Dr. Beach, that's his second. He has 2 links. He's moderating the other side. So, and I told you about my Dr. Wilson.
He's gonna stop recording.
There, so he's hanging on.
Yeah.
So let me stop the screen share.
And then the recording too is still on.
Yes. Get that real quick.